Welcome to the Vandy Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Lee. Our guest today, Seabass of WNWS in Jackson, Tennessee. We will talk about basically the cancellation of everything, which happened within minutes before we did this podcast. This episode is presented by Wellspire, Nashville's Learning and Development Center. Wellspire offers personal and professional development opportunities in a beautiful facility in the Gulch neighborhood. Stop by for an event with world-renowned speakers or host an off-site event that will wow your team or your clients. We also thank our co-sponsor, the Well Coffee House, which turns coffee into water, has a mission to bring clean water to the world. Today's news presented by Sutherland & Belk, an SEC sports-loving injury firm in Nashville. These guys will shoot you straight on your rights and options when you've been injured in an accident. Call them at 615-846-6200 to get your questions answered. You can also visit them online at sbinjurylaw.com. Well, where do you start? Vanderbilt's basketball season ends in the SEC tournament with a loss to Arkansas. The Commodores may have played their final baseball game of the year in a midweek win over Toledo. Since then, everything has just gone crazy. The NCAA has canceled the NCAA tournament. It has canceled the College World Series. The SEC has canceled regular season play through the end of March. We do not know where this is going next, and that will be the talk of today's podcast. Seabass appears on our guest line, which is brought to you by Boll & Branch. Started by Vanderbilt graduates Scott and Missy Tannen. Had no clue how comfortable sheets could be till I got these. They are fair trade certified, meaning they are made under safe conditions by men and women treated and paid fairly. Try them for a month. You can return them for free, but you won't want to. Once you get these sheets, try the mattress. That was voted the best mattress of 2018. Go to bollandbranch.com. That's spelled B-O-L-L. Enter the promo code Vandy and get $50 off your first set of sheets. Seabass joins us on a Thursday afternoon. Man, I'm losing track of the days, and frankly, hard to keep track of anything anymore. Things are happening so quickly. I don't even know what to say anymore. I've never seen anything like what is going on. I have so many thoughts. I don't know where to begin. But first of all, I want to wish you well. Hope you are well. Wish our audience well. I'm sad on so many levels for so many things right now. And in the midst of it, I've got a family medical emergency in my own immediate family. It's not a coronavirus thing, but anyway, I've rambled. I'm just in shock at what's going on.
Yeah, it feels like we're stuck in a movie, doesn't it? This is the podcast you never thought you'd do, right?
You know, I mean, it's funny. A few days ago or a few weeks ago, I've just been thinking, you know, has Vanderbilt sports all just been burning down? What's the future of that? I never dreamed I wouldn't have a beat to cover this soon, though, for other reasons. This is, I don't know, that it's hard to know how to react to things in the middle of it, but this just seems like the biggest sports story of our lives. I mean, I guess it has to be.
Well, and I saw you say something on the post about imagine having to do this for a living. Well, I don't have to imagine. I do it too. In fact, I'll do it when I get done with this tonight. And, of course, also do a morning show that features whatever in the world it is you want to talk about. It's not a sports show. And, I mean, like as far as tonight goes, I mean, and nobody feels sorry for because you don't have sports to talk about, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know what's appropriate. I mean, you can only say, I have a 2-hour show. You can go and say, okay, everything's canceled. Next. You know, and then what about tomorrow night, and then Monday night, and all of next week, and all of that week? This is a new one on me, and you know, wherever you stand on it, correct reaction, a little too late, overreaction, I don't know. All of a sudden, the thing that we do for a living, I guess, doesn't seem all that important.
Well, yes and no. I think there's a lot to be said for the mundane things in life, or whatever you want to call this, that just help people get through their days. There's been many times where I've thought what I do is not that important. But I think God puts you in places and spaces for a reason. And to the guy out there who's having a rough day, who has enjoyed our podcasts or things we've written at times, I think that's where kind of God gives you your station in the world for whatever reason. It may not be the things like doctors are doing right now, or nurses, which my wife is one. So I don't ever put what we do on that level, but I do think it's got a role in the world. There's been so many thoughts that have raced through my head. I guess I want to start here. I hate the politicization of all this. I mean, I don't understand when life or death things became a political issue. I don't understand why. That's a whole other topic. My stance on this whole thing has been I don't really judge the people that have canceled things and events, because making my call on these things is not my area of expertise. I think you have to be safe. I think this is a scary thing. I think a lot of it's a mystery. But for that reason, because of the element of the mystery, I don't understand canceling the College World Series like they've just done within the past 30 minutes as we do this podcast. I mean, this thing is such an unknown. I have no issue with what's been done so far in terms of the coming horizon. I don't understand what is to be gained by canceling something in the middle of June at this point. I mean, maybe it will turn out to be the right decision, but that's a decision that could have been made later anyway. I just think this thing's a total wild card, and I don't understand the rush to go beyond the immediate horizon. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, it does. I did not know that until you just mentioned that about the College World Series. So, in effect, the college baseball season is over then, correct?
I mean, I would presume the announcements with they canceled championships, I guess that you could go on and play and you could see some conference series. I mean, it would seem kind of pointless, but I guess you could continue to play ball. I don't, to my knowledge, that has not been changed. So I guess you could, but I'm just stunned by all this. I really am. I don't know how to react. I mean, I know how to react. So many things about this make me sad. And all those pale in comparison to life and death stuff. But I think of how many kids and parents and coaches have worked their lives for these moments, and all these schools that just won a game in the NCAA tournament and are going to get to go to March Madness and experience that for the first time. Or like when I was a kid, my dad surprised us. He got us tickets to the Sweet 16 in Detroit, and just all those times of bonding and things that you work towards and all that, and it's just all gone. And again, all that pales in comparison to life and death and health, but I think there's an appropriate time of mourning for those things too.
No doubt. Plus, you got to remember, sports goes a long way in giving us a release from daily life. You know what I mean? You look forward to the things, and look, again, it's not a comparison of what's more important in life, but just the thought of, hey, there may not be a Masters, there may not be a Kentucky Derby. Will the NFL draft happen? The college baseball season looks like it's in effect been canceled. All spring athletics, they don't exist. You are looking at a life without sports right now, without a lot of things. But just, I mean, I've never been able to put my mind around that. But just think, that's the reality that we're facing. Is there is no sports.
I mean, we all need
I
distractions.
don't know what to do with that.
Some of the nicest correspondence I've gotten over the years are from people that were in bad situations or whatever, and they've said, I'm just appreciative that I have your podcast or whatever to listen to for, once a day or whatever, or something to read or something to distract me for this or that's going on in my life. And there is a role for this stuff. I mean, it's not life and death, but it does matter. And how do we go about the business of just putting one foot in front of the other without those things? And I just wonder, what does a life without that stuff look like? Without things that provide us fun and joy and connectivity, and I think all the things that God put us on the earth for.
Yeah, I mean, forget the fact that that's the stuff that pays my rent, man. It's. I mean, it's such a huge part of my life and many people's lives in so many different ways, and just to think that there's a possibility that, and look, I mean, I don't think this is the end of sports forever. I mean, and who knows, Chris, in 3 weeks everything could look completely different, and for the positive for all. None of us have ever really been here before, but I don't want to think about a world and a life where those things don't exist, where I don't have that to look forward to, the big game coming up, the draft, all the things that lead up to it, to know that for the immediate future, none of those things are going to be, they're just not going to be. I mean, honestly, I'm battling a little bit. I don't know what to do with it. Now, baseball has Major League Baseball. I think the one thing they've done is what they've back opening day 2 weeks. Right? Is that right? Last I saw, unless anything, because stuff keeps breaking every 5 minutes. But last I saw, their plan was to back it up at least 2 weeks, at least for the moment.
I'm thinking there's really nothing to compare this to. The closest thing, and it's not even remotely alike, that I can think of, and the way this sort of feels, is 9/11, but totally different for many different reasons. From a sports perspective, we've seen baseball seasons canceled twice in our lives. You saw it in, 1980 or 81, whichever one it was, 81. And then, of course, in 95, 94, then 94, which came in mid-August. So I think the one in 81 was more like, I think they missed like 60 games. So it was longer. Either way, I remember how that felt and just how weird the summer was, and how, not that life is empty without sports or baseball, but I'm thinking of those times and what it was like, even those were so long ago. And I just think of a part of my life that's so near and dear to me being gone like that was just hard to deal with.
Oh, yeah, and I'm sitting there thinking while you're talking, like, and I'm thinking about what do I say to people tonight when I'm doing the show? Because the one thing I don't want to do is make somebody feel guilty for talking about sports right now. When there's obviously bigger life issues, it's how to go about handling that. Somebody wants to call in and talk about sports. I mean, to be able to do that without feeling guilty, right?
Yeah, and I don't think you'll have any issue with people talking the rest of this week. I mean, I think our message boards will be active with things. And I find that things in times like this tend to bring people together a little bit more. That is my sincere hope for this. And I'll get back to some of that later. But the weird thing is going to be thinking about months ahead. And it's weird. This comes at an odd time. I am about to take a family vacation to Destin, and it's a much needed one. And I was literally about to do this anyway. I don't think I've ever done this. I've run the site since '03. I don't think I've ever just unplugged. I think for my well-being, I was about to do that anyway for about 8 or 9 days, like not even check the site, not write, just turn it over to Sean, no podcasting, which now this makes it way easier to do. But man, I mean, it's weird to think about, and especially, the Vanderbilt layer of complexity on top of this is a whole different thing. And I thought that's what a lot of this podcast would be about today. That almost seems immaterial at the moment, but there's a good part of me going, what do I do when I'm a freelancer and my income depends on sports? I mean, you at least get a salary, and it's still going to be a challenge for you in a different way. But there's a lot of people out there like me that everything I do is dependent on advertising and subscriptions, and there's just going to be nothing to cover. And I mean, that alone right there is the kind of thing that can lead you to career change.
Yeah, I mean, if you were coming to me for advice today, I often talk about stuff. I wouldn't know what to tell you. Well, I'm sorry, I would not know what to say. Because again, as everybody knows, we are in uncharted territory. We just are.
What's it been like being on the air today?
Um, you know, and the morning show is not a sports show, so and I'm just a co-host on it. So it's a 3 hour show, so I would say 2 hours. Now we have something called a text line, which people also text in the show, and an hour of it was a little bit more levity and stuff like that, because you got to do it. You just can't keep beating yourself, beating it to the ground and just wear everybody down. But boy, the reactions are just so across the board that it's hard, to take you take all the stance in which you feel. But I mean, think about it, Chris. You've got a faction of people. You got the group that says, "Dear God, you people, this is nothing. Stop panicking." Then you've got the ones that the earth is, that the sky's falling, and then the people that are in between, and then you got people that don't care either way, that like to make fun of it with memes and Facebook posts, and so there's so many different angles that people are coming at this with. You know what I mean? I think the only thing you can do is be responsible and put your thoughts out there and give people the opportunity, the platform to express what they're thinking.
I think your dogs have a platform to express what they're thinking.
Well, yeah, Mr. Bean don't play that stuff, man. Dr.
Right.
Sheldon Cooper is a straight up gangster, and if you come by his door, he's gonna let you know it. But yeah, I mean, I think it was more today about just letting people express themselves. But I would say probably, even though there were several different opinions being expressed, I think the overwhelming one was everybody else is stupid. You know what I mean? And you're going to get a lot of that. That person has the answer figured out. They know what's really going on, and everyone else is stupid.
Okay, I'm going to get on a soapbox for a minute, and this is as close to political as I'll ever get. I'm really not going to be political. I think once you hear it, it'll make sense. But I think one thing the world could use a lot more of is humility. Like, how do any of us have the grounds to know any of this stuff? I mean, you see doctors that say this is overblown. You see them that are making catastrophic claims. Again, I don't know how we know any of this. We don't have a model for this. I have no idea where this is headed. No idea, which is why I'm on the side of I'm fine with canceling stuff for a few weeks. I'm not fine with canceling stuff long term because that presumes a knowledge we don't have. And again, once we get to that point, that's all going to be canceled anyway. The way the news media has done its job and the way people have reacted over the last really 3 or 4 years have really formed a lot of things that influence the way that I do my job. And I think I've said this on the podcast before. I've got an iPhone and I've got a news feed. And of course, it's all Trump all the time. That's not by design. That's just what everybody writes about these days. And you have Trump does something, and literally half the stuff on my phone is he's an idiot. And then the other half is this is a conspiracy. And I'm like, there's literally like no middle ground. And I don't take a stance on it one way or the other. I didn't vote in the last election. I probably won't vote in the next one either because I'm just fed up with it all. And what I'm really fed up with is the lack of nuance and the lack of truth. I don't watch the news that much anymore because I don't know who to trust. Everything seems to come with an agenda. Headlines seem to almost be pre-written. And when I really get upset is in moments like this, where again, there is no in between. Like, what world do people live in that there cannot be an in between in a situation like this where we literally do not know what in the world is coming next? And
Mm-hmm.
it makes me angry because how much important stuff gets tuned out just because we cannot trust what's presented in front of us. I mean, either have we gotten to where everything is such an extreme all the time? That's what I do not get. I mean, is there not room for truth? How do we get to where we prioritize life and death issues where if you vote for this party, you take this side. If you vote for that party, you take another? I mean, the extremes could not be more extreme and more apart from each other. And like, why is it we have no middle ground anymore? Why do facts, why do those things just not matter anymore?
Yeah, that's which is crazy. One of the things that we were dealing with a little bit, very little, but there were some people that were saying this morning, and because the narrative is being driven that all of this, which is utterly ridiculous, is media driven. The country of Italy does not shut down because of the media.
I know
And this is not a
this stuff drives me
United States
bananas.
thing. It's not a United States thing. It's a world thing. And I had somebody text today say, can we stop talking about this? People like you are the reason this thing is out of control. And I'm like, you really think this is what I want to be doing right now? You think I want to be talking about this, reporting about this? But if you don't do it, then, well, why aren't you reporting on this? And so it's like, well, wait a minute. You got a group over here saying that we're the reason for it all. And then, we're reporting. Now, there may be people out there on your television set that are loving this from a media standpoint, and that's what they do. I ain't one of them. This sucks. This sucks in every conceivable way. And I have zero agendas of any kind. But at the same time, when this stuff, when it breaks down, when everything's go down, that's who you go to get the information. You're not just, we're going to go out some little bird whisper in your ear. You ain't got any idea. You're not going to have any, you don't have those connections. You need the media is necessary. But a fraction of the media is turned into something, a monster. That's not what I did. We had a couple lumping us in that together today, and I'm like, wait a minute. If we don't report on this, first of all, somebody else is going to. And I say somebody, everyone is. That's the subject that everybody is talking about, regardless of where you are. But it kind of rubbed me the wrong way when the assumption was that I'm enjoying this and trying to profit of it, because that is the last thing that is true.
Oh, you have seen me catch the brunt of that over the last couple of months in the stuff that I'm working on. People make assumptions about you. People take shots at your character, your motivations. And I mean, I get why, but now the whole thing has infected all of us, where you can't even report a simple story or give your opinion on stuff without just people just unloading on you if they don't agree with it. I'm like, whatever happened to let's take the facts, let's sort them out, let's recognize there's room for opinion. Let's recognize that if you ask me my opinion, I'm going to tell you, may be right, may not be wrong. But how has America gotten to the place where it is? I just don't understand any of this.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And the bravery of being out of range, saying things to people we would never say to their face, and we have conversations and responses these days with memes instead of actual creative thought and conversation. It's an odd time to be alive, but I don't know, Chris. I'm at a loss. I'm at a loss.
I think the social phenomenon about this that'll be interesting. I think we were created for community and personal touch and being around each other, and the world has gotten increasingly isolationist where we sit in front of our phone, and I'm as guilty of as much as anybody, okay? So This is not preaching. It just is what it is. And the keyboard and all those things have given us distance. And like you said, we get people say things that they wouldn't say to other people. I see it on the message boards all the time. I'm like, I see this guy and that guy fighting, and I know both of them. And I know that when I'm around both of them, I like them. And they're fun to be around, and they're engaging. And like if person A and person B weren't at each other's throats on the internet, and they just were sitting next to each other in a bar or restaurant, they'd probably get along. So you have that whole dynamic of society that sort of is anonymous, and social media's got our attention, and you have this world of Twitter out there that doesn't mirror the world that a lot of us live in, and it brings out the worst in people. And now that we are in a situation where isolation is going to be more or less encouraged for in the interest of public health, it's going to be really interesting to see how that dynamic plays out. I mean, I'm afraid I know the answer already, especially as polarized as the country is, and especially as people have taken sides on this issue, not because of the facts, but just because what they believe about everybody and their motives for reporting things. I don't know, man. I hope that there is something in this that brings about a healing and a better human nature in all of us. And that's what tragedy tends to do at times. I mean, you saw it shortly after 9/11, but now that it feeds in this whole dynamic where we are not connected physically and in each other's presence immediately, but by the keyboard, I just wonder if that's not going to make a lot of stuff worse.
I don't know. I hope not, but I'm not. I'm not going to discount the possibility of that. But I do agree. Tough times do make people rally. I mean, look what happened in the 615 just last week, Chris. You know what I mean? I mean, something like that tends to do that. It happened here twice, and it had that effect. The problem is that we don't. It's on to the next thing, and then we forget about it. But something like this, game changers like this. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it has a chance. Because the one thing that I would say is you would talk about unification. Unification was never as strong as it was September the 12th, 2001. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no
I
doubt.
mean,
I mean, we stopped
I mean,
stopped fighting for a while, and that was right after the election stuff. That was really one of the more divisive things that I've lived through. And for about really a month or two, we just kind of all forgot about that. But then we just got right back to the business of fighting with each other again.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is just so not what I'm about. So it just, there are people that relish this opportunity for stuff like this. I'm not one of those. I don't enjoy this. I don't enjoy finger pointing and getting after each other, and but that's again that's where we're at right now. And I mean, people are actually politicizing a virus. I mean, how
I
do
know.
you do that? How do you
It's just
politicize a
so
virus?
sad. It is so sad because are matters of public health and safety not in everybody's best interest, whether you and I think alike on anything or not. That's what I don't understand how we got to this point as a country.
I don't either, man. I do not either.
Let's talk sports. Let's see. I think right
Yeah,
now the NBA has canceled the regular season,
suspended
suspended.
unless they've gone, unless they've made another move today. But the action last night was to suspend the season, not full fledged cancel, and unless that has changed this afternoon.
Well, I'm literally getting on Twitter as things break to see what else is going on. But so, okay, hockey, I think the regular season has been suspended.
Yes, NHL suspends the regular season effective today,
So
with less than a month to go in the season.
we may have playoffs in both. So possibly. So then there is the we've already talked about the NCAA. It looks like just everything's off.
Yeah, and
Um,
all these kids have to go home. For all these campuses that are closing down, they all got to go home.
Yeah, Vanderbilt told everybody yesterday you got to be out by Sunday. So I'm trying to think. I mean, that creates a whole weird dynamic with the playoffs now. I mean, I guess maybe the closest thing that gives us a chance to get back to normal now is maybe golf, Major League Baseball, NASCAR. I don't know.
Well, I know NASCAR did something too. I'm not sure what it is. I know NASCAR did some type of cancellation, but you got to start looking at golf as well. The NFL draft is 6 weeks from today in Las Vegas. I
Or not?
mean,
Yeah.
we had 600,000. Now, I'm not expecting Las Vegas to be able to match what happened in the 615 last year, but I mean, what are we talking about here? I mean, because think about this, I would assume that all pro days are canceled
Yeah,
or
Vanderbilt
going
has
to be.
canceled its, yes.
Yeah, so all these pro days are going to be canceled now. So are you going to have a draft? And are you going to have one where nobody attends, or even going to have one? You got you got these college kids who are going to be losing money themselves right now because they can't have a pro day. The Kentucky Derby. I mean, where thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people are on top of each other, crammed in the field as well. Is that going to happen? That's what are we, a month and a half away from that? Is the Masters going to be played? There's, is the NBA going to eventually? I mean, you got two infected players, at least two infected players that we know of for right now. Which, by the way, I saw a graph today that says because the Gobert and Mitchell and the Jazz play, whatever it is, that you can connect all 30 teams to each other as far as potential exposure. Like every player on every team. So I don't know. I mean, the closest thing to anything I guess I can tell is that the Major League Baseball is at this point, for right now at least, is delaying the start of the season for 2 weeks. MLS has suspended it for 30 days. I mean, and then what do you do if you get the all clear? You have all these.
There's just like a whole host of questions now in my mind. Like, do you get kids a red shirt? Do you give them an extra year of eligibility right now or in the future? And if so, then that really screws with roster limits because you got a class of people on every team going out to make room for the ones coming in, right? So
Right.
do you allow temporary roster exemptions? I mean, like, that's the other thing. Like, how do you resolve that? Like, especially in baseball, where you'll see teams sign classes of 15 or more, but you might have some people that try to come back for another year that wouldn't because they missed the season. Like, how do you resolve that whole thing? That's going to be one interesting outcome of all this
Well,
is that problem that creates.
yeah, and here's something else for you. Um, think about this. Now, even though it's a long way away, we have an early signing period now in football, right?
Correct.
Well, we also have official visits in the spring. In the spring semester now. Well, those are out. So how does that go about affecting? You know what I mean? Because once you get to the fall, I mean, these cats, they're busy with their football seasons. But the way that they've restructured thing now, having this early signing period, is they allowed them to be able to visit during the spring. That's gone. So how do you handle the early signing period now?
Yeah, how do you
Does
handle
it go?
visits?
Does it go away? Do you? I mean, I understand you can have the summertime and whatnot, but even in those, they're camping, and doing other stuff. This was an opportunity for them for official visits and whatnot. And of course, for the Commodores, football wise, June has always been a monster month. That's when you say it's probably the month for Vanderbilt football recruiting.
I mean, it has been. Well, and let me throw another
You
thing
know,
at you here, okay? How do you handle it when some kids are taking visits because you got some campuses that are still open, and then you got other places like Vanderbilt that are just shut down? How do you deal with all that?
I don't know. I mean, these are questions that that have to be asked, and there's a lot of questions that we don't even realize are questions yet. We'll think about them later on. But gosh, I mean, the opportunity for coaches to evaluate and all the stuff. I mean, I'm guess right. Hmm.
I'm sorry I
Hello.
lost you there for a second.
Yeah. So is faculty going to be on campus? Do we know about that?
No, Vanderbilt is having all of its classes online. Oh, you
Yeah, but
mean
I mean,
like
like
will
with
they
the foot,
take office
like,
hours? That's a good question. I mean,
but
I
like
would
the
think
football
not.
program, and is the
Yeah,
football office open? Any of that?
that's a
You know,
great
I,
question. I don't know how you. I mean, I don't know why. If you tell students not to be there, why would you tell faculty to be there? Why would you have
you got,
administrative offices open? That's a great question.
yeah. I mean, I just, I don't, and the answer is I don't know. And so even if this thing gets rectified sooner than later, I mean, there's still going to be a backlog of a whole bunch of stuff, that's going to cause issues. And again, I'm well aware that that's not the primary concern here, but I mean, life will go on, and these things will happen, and the structures is just going to be all out of whack, and I don't know how that's going to be handled. And I know that the NCAA, again, that's not at the forefront for them, but somewhere down the line, these are things that are going to need to be addressed. And think about the like when I was talking about the NFL draft and the pro days and whatnot, man. I mean, this this next month is as critical a part as there is. When it comes to the draft, this last month down the stretch, man, this is where the key decisions are made, and you know, I I don't know what you do. I mean, as an organization, how do you handle that? Not being able to go to pro days, and you've got some. I think, I don't know if it was Major League Baseball, it might be baseball, where they sent the scouts on the road home, sent them home, understandably, but sent them home nonetheless.
I'm just gonna talk out loud for a minute. I
Oh, I was
feel
hoping you talk well, to
you just
yourself.
keep it to myself. Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
makes for interesting podcasting that way. But I guess I feel guilty. Here I am because I know that again in the scope of things, when you're talking human lives and stuff, it's all trivial, and I don't dispute that. But at the same time, this is my favorite month of the year. I mean, I have gone through one heck of a winter with the stuff I've been covering, and it's been depressing. Um, and this is always the time of the year that I circle because you live in this area of the country, and like from December through February, the sky is just gunmetal gray for 3 months straight, right? And it's
Right.
cold and wet, and it's just depressing. And this time of the season, I mean, the NCAA tournament's my favorite sporting event. Baseball's my favorite sport. And now, like the time of the year that I most look forward to, and the time that I really, frankly, needed it more than ever right now, it's just right now it's just gone, and I'm struggling dealing with that. I mean, these are the things that I look forward to and circle on the calendar. I think I've said this on the podcast before. Before I did sports journalism full time, I would take a couple days of my vacation every year. I might have 2 weeks, but I'd take 2 days to sit at home and watch the NCAA tournament. I mean, opening day, you just wake up with the spring in your step, and it's just you start to realize how for granted you take little things like that and how much of a part of the fabric of your life those things are. And again, not to assign those things disproportionate a disproportionate place in the world of things. But it's stuff like that that a lot of times makes life worth living. And you take road trips with friends and you watch the tournament with buddies, and just a whole part of our way of life is just for the foreseeable future not going to happen. And that's something I suspect I'm not the only one having a tough time coming to grips with right now.
Or coming into work Monday and comparing notes with all the coworkers about how many you got right in the first round.
Yeah.
And how many of your Final Fours are still alive, and what your overall record is. And comparing notes. I mean, that's a pleasure to be sure. I mean, think about that, Chris. Think about that. Think how many times you've done that, man. Oh, man, Seton Hall killed me. Lost at the buzzer. But I did pick Weber State. You know what I'm saying? That type of stuff. Those
It's
are
the fun of
conversations that aren't
March.
going to happen.
Yeah.
I know. Those
or who
those
I
are
got in my
conversations that
fantasy
aren't going to
draft.
take place.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, and we'll have our fantasy baseball draft. I think is scheduled next week. I'm the commissioner. I'm gonna do it just out of stubbornness, if nothing else.
Listen, I don't care if we cancel the season. We're still
we're gonna have an imaginary draft for a season that may never be played.
Oh man, phenomenal.
Well, and I do this. My kids were home today. My wife is working, so they're out playing in the bonus room behind me. And my son is 6, and I've already reached this thing with him. Like, he knows what I do for a living, so he sees me watching Vanderbilt games, and he's adopted them as his team. And he gets up in the morning, and my wife talked to him yesterday about, no, buddy, you can't watch the SEC tournament because it's after your bedtime and everything. And that brought him to tears. I mean, the kid just turned 6, and he's like totally undeterred by all the losing, right? And I have some conflicting things about like watching him corrupt through what that could bring. But that's where his heart is, and he's already developed a love and a passion for this, where he gets up in the morning and he hadn't seen a game, and Dad, who won last night? And he's sitting there and he's fascinated with brackets. He's like, Dad, print me out an SEC tournament bracket. I'm going to pick all the winners, and going through that. And he was asking me today, and like he couldn't grasp, hey, Dad, what about the bracket? Who's gonna, buddy? They've canceled it. Well, what about the NCAA, buddy? They've canceled it. Well, what are they? And just having explained to him that like all these things that he looks forward to now, kind of just broke my heart as a dad.
What about? I mean, they're in the middle of travel ball now, right? Is that right? Is this is travel? Yeah, this is the start of travel balls. I guess, is that still on? Have you heard anything as far as that goes?
I mean, I don't know. Our Little League practice got canceled today. Yeah. I mean, I would presume a lot of that's going on. I mean, the logical question now is, if you're canceling all these sporting events, how in the world can you hold school? In Williamson County, where I lived, already canceled it Thursday and Friday. It already canceled it Monday. We went to school Tuesday and Wednesday. Next week's our spring break, so we get a little bit of a buffer there. But, I mean, you have to think that's coming next.
Now, then you start asking questions about church and going out to eat. And the next thing you know, you're afraid to leave your house. So that's...
Well, I will tell you right now, we're going to Destin. We're leaving Saturday morning. I'm not letting that get in the way, unless it takes a dramatic turn. I'll be careful. I'm a compulsive, almost hand washer anyway. I don't believe in letting fear and panic rule your life to an extreme degree. I believe in common sense, and man, maybe I'm making a mistake there. I don't know. But again, there's certain things in life that are worth living. We've looked forward to this for so long, and God knows I need this vacation just to get away. We're going to see family. I mean, we won't do anything stupid. We'll be careful. I mean, I don't know. That's the way I'm going to
But
approach
what
it.
does that even mean? What does that even mean?
What do you mean?
Well, I'm just saying, we're not going to be stupid. We're going to be careful. I
Oh, I mean,
mean,
wash your hands.
and I get that, but I mean, it could be just simple as going somewhere.
Oh, I know. I don't.
You know,
That's not how I'm going to go about my life. I'm not going to let this paralyze me unless it becomes obvious that
yeah,
it has to.
right. I totally understand, and I wouldn't try to talk you out of it anyway. I think it's probably the right thing to do, as you said, unless something takes a drastic turn. But here's what I would also say: 48 hours ago, this wasn't. I mean, there was concern to be sure, but it seems like yesterday the dam broke. The dam broke. Day before that, on Tuesday, it was not like what we're facing now.
I'm glad you
Now,
said that. I was talking to Gabe DeArmond, who runs the Missouri site. Gabe and I think, as you guys know, are good friends. And we were talking, Dan Wolken wrote that thing a day or two ago about canceling the NCAA tournament. And everybody was like, what? That's so extreme. And that seems like that was 3 months ago now.
yeah, yeah. Because I remember when I was like, "Come on, dude, step back just a second." But here we are, 48 hours later. So, I mean, as far as 48 hours from now, I'm almost going to take it one day at a time. That's all we can do. But it's just these the preliminary day first few days here, as far as this goes, I think are what are really tough because we're having all this. It seems like every 5 minutes some big factor in our lives has been canceled or suspended or taking a turn for the worse. So I think it's just all kind of hitting us all at once.
If everything got canceled for the next year, what would you miss the most?
The NFL draft.
Yeah, I'm
It's my
not
favorite.
surprised you
It's my
said that.
favorite sporting event.
Yeah, I don't
Do
know.
I now?
It's that's fun. I mean, I like that too. I think it's neat. For me, it's going to be Major League Baseball. That has just been such a part of the fabric of my life. I mean, I was a kid that I used to get up before school, even in elementary school, and go get the paper and look at the box scores and see who won. That has been so much of the background of my life for so long, ever since I was 7 or 8 years old, that's going to be really hard for me to live without if it got to that point. I mean, again,
Yeah, and
keep
I think
everything in
about
proper
I think
perspective, but that's been so near and dear to my heart that if baseball season got canceled, that would be heartbreaking.
well, and the other thing I think about is like high school seniors in spring sports like baseball and softball who this is their chance. This is their senior. It's their last year, and maybe it's their last chance to showcase themselves. And what happens if these seasons get canceled? They never get that opportunity. You can't get it back. They can't redshirt.
No, and
So
I had that conversation. I know a few reporters with the Hustler really like those guys. The Hustler, I think, as most people know, is Vanderbilt's student paper. Max Schneider, I've gotten to know Max, really like Max. He's a sharp dude and a good writer. And I just said to them, I said, look, I feel bad for you guys because I remember college was the most fun 4 years of my life and how much I got out of it and the part of community and friendships and just learning things. And, that was really hard for me to walk away from. I remember going to a fraternity thing we had. We had a formal and we all gave up and give a senior speech. I remember when I was over, I just broke down in tears because I was coming to grips with losing something. And that's not like me, by the way, but coming to grips with losing something that had been such a fun ride and knowing I could never go back and do that again was hard. And I feel sorry for the kids in college who don't get to finish out their senior years in that kind of way and say their goodbyes and have their last spring formals and whatever else comes with the territory because that's just part of life you can never get back. Again, bigger tragedies in the world, but I do feel so badly for the people that are going to miss out on those experiences that you never forget. And that's another part of this, too, that is a little deflating.
yeah, yeah, no doubt about it. Hey, I've only got a couple of minutes left, so just a couple things real quick, Chris. I saw where uh, Moyer and Otan are in the transfer portal.
And with that, let's do the mailbag, which is brought to you by Vanderbilt fan and independent insurance agent Josh Minton of Brentwood. If you need home, auto, motorcycle, renters, landlord, life, or commercial insurance, Josh is the guy to contact. Call him at 615-933-1979. Email him at josh@hqinsurance.com. Follow him at Facebook, on Facebook at JD Minton HQ. He is my insurance agent. Give him a try. I think you'll be pleased. VU Matt23 asked about that and what you thought of the transfers, Moyer and Yankovic.
I know we need numbers now, but neither one of those guys were really able to contribute. I don't think it's going to make a big difference as far as wins and losses for this basketball team. Hope they find a school that fits them and that they can showcase their abilities. It just didn't work out here. I guess my question that I have is it just, I got to tell you, man, there's a blueprint there. I think, if the right things were to happen, this could be a pretty competitive basketball team next year. But if we were to lose a couple more in that transfer portal, or if Brown weren't to come back, I think it would definitely hurt this team, and depth would be an issue once again. You just can't be in a position where you're playing multiple walk-ons on the court at the same time. You just can't. Not competing in a conference like this. It's just, you're never going to win that way.
I never saw the skill set for Yankovic. I just didn't understand that one. The whole spring recruiting, looking back on it now, how they're out offering that kid a scholarship and not chasing Matt Morrell or Randy Brady or even Keon Johnson for that matter. They didn't kick the tires on him. And you know my opinion about him. I think that kid's got some issues, but I think with the right coaching, it could have been straightened out. I look back and that whole thing was bizarre. I feel bad for Matt Moyer. I've always kind of liked Matt. I've been really sorry for him that it never worked out better. I know he had foot issues and the shoulder issue.
True.
Probably wasn't going to work out anyway, but he's a well-liked kid.
Yeah.
Matt, I think, really wanted to do well, and that might have been part of his problem. Sometimes there's some of us that we can put too much pressure on ourselves. I think Matt is kind of wired that way. I always felt pretty terribly for Matt that it didn't go better, and I know that Matt took a ton of criticism. I know he didn't play well, but you hate to see that for a kid, especially one who's, I think, pretty well-meaning and I don't want to say sensitive. I don't know if it's the right word, but just a nice and decent kid. I hope that it goes well for him. I hope he finds a landing spot.
Me too.
And has a good ending to this. That makes me feel bad. Just as an aside, and I guess this would have been a bigger storyline if they didn't get a huge win against South Carolina to close the regular season. I thought not having a senior night was really crappy. I mean, at a minimum, you had John Jossel, who walked on. Everybody deserves a rite of passage like that. I mean, they always did that before they honored the managers. There was never any explanation on why they didn't have a senior night. You could have honored Moyer in that setting because he's an academic senior, Cleavon Brown if it doesn't work out. I just thought that was really crummy, and I didn't get that.
Yeah, and did they ever give a reason as to why?
No.
Okay, well, yeah, I agree with you.
I mean, and that's one of those things that probably comes up at the press conference if that game goes differently, but it just didn't seem like it wasn't the story at the time. They just won a big game and all the things that went with it and beat a pretty decent team. So it just kind of fell off the radar, but I think that would have gotten more talk had that game gone differently. TC Stevenson, I guess, asked the question we're all wondering. How do you survive the next few weeks now that sports are canceled?
I'll let you know in a couple of weeks. I'm going to say right now, I don't know. It's hard for me to fathom, but to be continued, TC. I will have to answer that in 2 weeks. Right now, I don't know.
My hope is it makes us kinder and more compassionate, and that we find ways to bond together like we did after 9/11 and can overlook some of the petty stuff and just kind of get through all these things together and find some simple pleasures in life, slow down, maybe not be on social media as much. Maybe for me, spend more time with my kids and my wife, and uh, be a little better about not being distracted with stuff. But I hope that there is a better nature of humanity. Tragedy tends to bind us together a lot of times, and I hope that in this somewhere that it does that at a time that this country really needs it.
Hey, I agree with everything you said. I do have one question real quick though for baseball. So is the college baseball season then is what? It's done. Is that right?
I don't think that's been determined. I think the World Series has been canceled. I think the next 3 weeks have been canceled, but I don't think the season has been canceled.
But if you've got these young men who have been told to leave campus that have to go back to their homes in other parts of the country, how are they supposed to be there to play baseball?
Well, I don't know that they've been told to go home, but
It,
I think that, I mean, I presume that means move off campus. I don't know.
no, I mean, because I think if I'm trying to, because there's so many things going on, is it like online for the rest of the semester? Is that what it is
That's correct.
in Nashville? Okay, so the rest of the semester there's no on-campus stuff. Okay,
Correct. They've canceled speakers. I think sports may have been the last thing to get canceled, and that was really an SEC thing and not a school thing.
right. So I mean, all of a sudden these kids have to find a place to live. Right,
Yeah.
right. I don't know. I mean, I don't know really how that's supposed to work. Especially, I mean, like especially if your housing is paid for, through baseball. I mean, but now you got to find an off-campus apartment that costs $1,200. You may not have that. Where are you supposed to go if they won't let you stay on campus? I mean, I don't know how that's supposed to work.
Yeah, I have a lot of questions about that too. Let me ask you one that just on this topic of baseball. How would you feel? And I hope to God they revisit this cancellation of the College World Series, because there's just no reason to do it at this point. If you have to do it eventually, I think everybody knows you have to do it, but now it makes no sense. I mean, I guess it makes some sense. You have plans and lead up to things, but still, it doesn't seem to me like we're at the point where that needs to be canceled. But anyway, how would you feel if, say, starting April 1st, they start playing ball again and they just go through what's left of the regular season and just end in the conference tournament? Would you rather have that, or would you just rather scrap the whole thing?
Well, I'd take that.
I would too, but
I mean, because here's another opportunity. These players, you have a Major League Baseball draft in June. You know,
yeah,
I understand they know who the players are. I get all that, but it's called a breakout season. You know what I mean? I mean, it's an opportunity here, and if you never did it, if you're a senior here, this is your last chance to showcase yourself. Maybe now that's gone. And if that's the case, how do you handle having a draft?
well, and what about the kid who knows he's not going pro, and this is the last baseball he'll ever be playing, and this time next year he's in a cubicle somewhere?
Yeah. Oh, man, this sucks.
It's depressing.
It sucks, dude. But that's the thing, because this is usually the type of thing that can lift people out of that. It's, well, I'm gonna go home tonight, sit back, kick up, throw my feet up, and watch the game. What I'm gonna do now? Kick them up and turn on the news and have them tell me how terrible everything is. Yeah,
I'm finding a little. This isn't really, but like this is just so depressing. And usually, like when I'm having a day like this, you know what I do?
Eat a bowl of Cocoa Puffs.
Close. I get a thing of ice cream. That's my pick me up. That's ice cream's my favorite thing in the world to eat. I think we've had this conversation.
Oh.
Well, I gave up sweets for Lent, so there's that.
Man,
maybe I would have rethought that had I known this was coming. So
you may have to develop another habit real quick.
I know.
Good enough. Well, that's all I got, dude. I got to bounce.
Hey, tell people where they can find your show, where they can find you online.
Yeah, you can find me online at Cheap Seats Bass, and you can listen to me on 101.5 FM in Jackson, Tennessee.
Well, just as a bulletin to our audience, this is probably going to be the last podcast for about a week and a half. I might come back with a baseball one, but again, we are heading to Florida. I'm going to take some much needed time off. That does not mean the end of the podcast. That does not mean the end of the website. I will pick back up in a couple weeks with something. I will probably do some, maybe some Where Are They Now? I've had a Barry Goheen podcast I've wanted to do. This gives me some time. So we will do something. We will make something of this, but just to let folks know, if they don't hear an episode for, say, 9-10 days, that is what's going on. So, my friend, I appreciate you joining me today. I'm glad you and I were able to do this together today, because I think you were the right guy to talk through this situation with.
Well, thank you, man. I really appreciate that. I enjoyed it as always. And hopefully next time we're doing one of these, it's about sports
Yeah.
as much as it possibly can be, and things get back to normal.
Yeah. Well, hope our audience out there is safe. Hope everyone is healthy. Say your prayers. Hug your parents and your loved ones a little tighter tonight. Be a little nicer to your neighbors. And until we see you next time, thank you for listening to the Advantage Sports Podcast.